Yeah, you can't.
Doug?
I think so.
So, and then we will go through some other things about the trail.
All right.
So we're going to start the slideshow.
Yeah. Pittsburgh.
Is this time?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, that was fun.
Added music.
Yeah, could have. Pronounced Allegheny.
Rockagini.
Yagagani.
Visuals neat. It goes over a highway, a river, and a rail line. It's amazing the amount of tunnels and bridges that were on this.
Wow. Eastern Continental Divide. Wow.
So are you north of the Mason-Dixon line there?
Actually south. We're down in Maryland right now.
Okay.
Yeah, so the slideshow is in order from beginning to end of our ride.
We went from Pittsburgh to DC.
Oh, Paw Paw Tunnel. Yeah.
How many days?
It was about 9. And we had one very short day because it was really windy and too cold. So we could have done it in less, but we decided to enjoy the ride instead of just trying to make our destination of the end.
Was this in the fall or spring?
Yeah, we went in October of 2018, and it was a little unseasonably cold.
It looks like it. You look
yeah.
awfully well bundled up there.
Yeah, in the morning we had every layer on.
That's the moon, by the way.
Yeah.
Full moon that night.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, it was
I
cool.
thought that was the sun.
I did too.
That's why I mentioned it. Canal going over the river. That was neat.
That was Doug Shrunk Me.
That's neat looking
Oh,
there.
that's
Had her on the handlebars.
There's
Yeah.
ready to talk to.
The couple we met, they were from Alaska.
Ooh.
We spent the last night
in that.
in that lock house.
I like that.
Is that Great Falls?
Yeah. It's the
Yeah.
Great Falls. Yeah.
Georgetown,
Yeah,
right?
going into DC. Yeah.
It's kind of funny, the canal running through all the industrial buildings. And the last mile marker.
Wow, great.
Nice. That looked like a good trip.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was. We loved the trip. We had a great time, and we don't get much for repeating something, so we loved the backpacking of the bike packing, so we want to do it again someplace else. We just got to figure out what's next on that and fit it in between everything else.
I know there's too much to do.
Yeah, so Doug worked outside today and left me inside doing this presentation, and then after I got done, I realized I included like history of the Gap, history of the C&O Canal. And I'm like, what was I thinking?
If this was to be an educational
like,
session, huh?
What's the light? So we do have another slideshow thing that we'll just go through some of it, and we won't bore you with anything. But so, start the other one, yeah. So here's a map. So we started in Pittsburgh and went to Washington.
Hey, Jeff. You might need to share. Yeah, I want to share again.
You're going to start another share.
Yeah.
There you go. So there it is on the map. It's a total of 335-ish miles. The Gap is 150 miles long, and then the C&O Canal towpath is 185. And they connect in the middle at Cumberland, Maryland. So when we originally wanted to do this, the thing that was keeping us from doing it was, see, there's the history. You can skip that.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that was fine. I was still talking about how we did it. All right, that's all right. What was keeping us from doing it basically was we didn't know how we were going to get from end to end or shuttle and all that. We were looking into shuttles and they were expensive and everything. And then I heard about Amtrak runs a train called the Capital Limited that runs from Washington to Chicago but stops in Pittsburgh and actually stops at like 5 or 6 different towns along the trail every day, and you can take your bike on it. So once we learned that, we were like, it was such a no-brainer at that point. So we drove to Washington, D.C., loaded our bikes, took the train to Pittsburgh, and then rode back to our car.
No, I don't know where we're on. Just go ahead, say it.
You just talk about email.
No, just yeah. The reason why we actually chose to go from Pittsburgh to back to DC is this one section that goes from the Eastern Continental Divide down into Cumberland is about a 23 mile stretch. And if you come from DC and head out to Pittsburgh, it's a heck of a climb. But basically going from Pittsburgh to DC, it's only about a 1% grade, and it made it very nice to go up to the Eastern Continental Divide. Once we hit that, we basically coasted downhill for about 3 hours or so, which was an awesome day. It was a lot of fun. I mean, we hit major tunnels and beautiful sights along the way. We hit the Mason-Dixon line and just kind of cruised all the way down to Cumberland, and then made our way on the C&O Canal from there.
What is the grade if you went the opposite direction? You said, I mean, obviously I could tell it's big. You said it was 1% going south. Do you know what it was?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it is, but basically we could pretty much coast.
It's not as steep as it looks in this.
Of course. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Because it is a rail line, obviously.
Yeah, yeah.
But
it just keeps coming at you.
We coasted for 23 miles. Like, we were just laughing. It was so ridiculous the whole day.
Sounds like a fun coast.
It was a lot of fun, especially after the first couple of days getting to the Eastern Continental Divide.
Right.
Yeah.
I was able to take videos while we were riding and, get out the pedal. It was fun. Yeah. And the other part, most of it was easy. It's packed. It's a limestone packed gravel on the Gap. So it's a very nice, well-maintained trail. But when you have extra 30 to 40 pounds of gear on you, you can feel a little bit of grade. And when we started having a little bit of steep, after you're like at mile 30, of the day, you start feeling it a little bit. So yeah, that was definitely nice having that on there. But yeah, so the gap surface it's beautiful, and it's
Right.
super well maintained. Yeah, like Doug said, man,
Wow.
there's a total of 30 bridges on the gap, and yeah, they're all different, and it's cool. I mean, that's one of the things I think we liked the most was
Right. All the different types of
bridges and tunnels. The one bridge there it's called the Warren Truss Bridge. It's a cast iron bridge. It's one of two left in the United States. Which I found that out today. I didn't know at the time when we went over it. But the viaduct there, Doug
Here
mentioned.
on the right.
Yeah.
It passes over a train line, a highway, and a river. It was,
Yeah, it
I
was
don't know,
cool. That was about like
three-quarters of a mile long bridge.
Right. Yeah, it's about 1,000.
So
I think it's 1,000 feet up.
Right.
It
was awesome.
It was cool.
It's a neat bridge.
But yeah, lots of other bridges and tunnels. There was some small tunnels, but there was like some four major tunnels. The Big Savage Tunnel is it goes through Big Savage Mountain. That was really cool. We actually met wasn't a reporter, it was like a journalist. He was doing the ride. He was actually trying to bring awareness to funding for the Big Savage Tunnel that had run out in government. And he runs a podcast, and he interviewed us why we were actually riding our bikes on the trail. And then we got to hear the podcast. Maybe cut me out. He had Doug on there.
That's right. So my 15 seconds of fame, I was on a podcast. So.
And that podcaster actually was in the movie. What was the movie?
The climbing movie?
With Alex Hummel. The Solo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Free Solo. So the guy who interviewed us was in that movie. He had
He was
about
interviewing
5
Alex.
seconds of fame in there. So yeah, lots of rivers. The trail runs along, in the gap, it runs along the Mulligahana, the Allegheny, crosses over the Castleman. And then along the trail, there's campsites. They're called hiker-biker campsites. It's kind of a first come, first serve type thing, and you just set up along the trail, and it's awesome. They're free. It is. Everything's super friendly and easy.
And is that true? The campsites for both the CNO and the Gap?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It is. So yeah, I was going to give you a brief history on this, but we'll skip that.
Do you have any trouble getting campsites or being full or anything?
But that.
Do you have any trouble with the campsites already being taken?
No, because when we went, it was fall. And,
Yeah, the time of year
Yeah.
was.
We could tell that in the middle of the summer, there were towns and houses that had things you could tell that were probably booming for the trail in the summer. Like not only just through bikers, but day bikers and stuff. Like houses you could camp at people's lawns. They probably, they charge $20 or maybe $10 camp at their house, or sometimes, the kids would have lemonade stands and occasionally that, but you could tell there was a lot more buzz probably in the heat of the summer.
And how could you tell that? Was it marked on the trail, like signage, or?
Yeah, and we also saw like things that were set up but closed, like there'd be a stand or or a little restaurant or a cafe, that was closed down, but are only open seasonally, like during the summer seasons. And plus people. So do you guys want any history?
Well, I'd like to know what happened in 1820.
Me too.
1828. That's actually when
1828.
the CNO Canal started.
Yeah, that's when they
Okay.
built the canal, right? So the canal operated for about 100
What
years.
happened in 2071?
71, yeah. You mean 70?
Oh my
Wow.
gosh.
You're dyslexic.
That's the future of the trail. I'm gonna get.
I didn't even notice
Hey,
that
guys.
until you said that then. Funny.
That's where we all have flying bikes, and that's how you're going to go down it, right?
There you go.
I have
Oh,
a picture that goes with that date. You ruined it.
Yeah.
So the Gap Trail and the C&O Trail are completely different as far as like what the trail itself is like. Yeah, the Gap's kind of wide, crushed limestone. Yeah, it's kind of the same the whole way. When you get to the C&O, it's a towpath. Sometimes it's a little single track. Sometimes it's like a double track. When we went in 2018, it was after the summer or the year of rain. So there was a lot. Yeah.
Do they intersect? And one keeps, like, does the C&O trail
it
keep
continues.
going?
Yep.
Keeps going
Yep.
past the intersection? Okay.
At the Cumberland Gap.
Right.
Yep, right in the
Okay.
in the town of Cumberland. There's it just you go in, you get off one, and you get on the other.
Right.
They think they just go.
They butt right up against one another. You go off of one right into the next.
Are there any or many on-road sections?
Done.
None.
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 Not one.
Cool.
That's great.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, you don't even really even go near roads.
No.
There's not even any road crossings for the most part. The only time
Now,
you
are there places for you to get food then if there's no cross roads or
I
anything?
guess there is
On the
crossings.
Gap, there was a couple of sections that did have crossroads that you had to go over. But like when we ride on the Schuylkill River up and through Birdsboro, where it is an actual road that we're on, there is none of that. It really
Okay.
is all path that does cross over certain roads, but there aren't really many intersections. There are a couple of
No.
small towns that are either right there that we're crossing over, or it's a very
Yeah, but
short
it's-
ride
yeah.
off of the trail.
Right, it's more of
Then
like
what did you do for food if you were gone
Well, it's
that
more-
long?
it's actually more about trail access. So there was access points. So there would be like a parking lot or a trailhead, and then you could ride down that trailhead and get on the road. There was lots of towns.
Okay.
Yeah, so there was plenty of towns. But what I'm saying, wasn't like you had to stop and worry about traffic.
Right,
on the
right.
road. There was none of that anyway. But yeah, there was access to towns pretty frequently on the C&O, not as much on the Gap.
But to answer your question, Lorraine, as far as food and whatnot, what we did is we camped one night and then hoteled another night. And
Okay.
at that point in time, when we were hoteling it, we would just stock up with enough food for a day or two or three, all depending on where our next stop was. So
Right.
there is access for food along the way.
Oh, yeah, that's plenty. I think you could do it with very little food, like,
Yeah.
and just, because there's also little
Minimal.
cafes and local restaurants you could ride to, like you could get
Mhm.
on the trail and ride into a little town or,
You could hotel or B&B the entire trip. You
yes.
wouldn't have to camp at all
Right.
if you wanted to go that route.
Yeah, I'm glad, we kind of did what we did because just, it was colder. And it allowed.
Right. It was good. We enjoyed it.
Yeah. So and then when you were on the canal, it was kind of cool because you had the canal on one side and the Potomac on your right side, which depending on which direction you were going. So yeah, you had features, dams in the river, and then in the canal there's always some wildlife. The Paw Paw Tunnel is really cool because the canal and the trail go through the tunnel.
More campsites actually along the C&O Canal. Campsites are stocked since it's a national park. They basically had potable water and porta potties about every 5 miles with campsites.
Wow.
And of course, all first come, first serve. So that's 185 miles or so of a national park that you're going through with campsites frequent. So that made it real nice.
Where does the
Those
C&O Canal?
campsites they're set up that people that are canoeing and kayaking on the Potomac can also use those campsites.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good point, Buster. And, all right. So yeah, basically, I mean, I set Kris and my bike up identical with the back rack, so we could have our panniers and our extras to go on, and then on the front handlebars had the Ortlieb handlebar bag, which made it really nice to carry our everyday stuff, our phones and wallets and whatever. Adding all this gear, added about an extra 40 pounds or so with our tent, sleeping bags, clothes, food, our kitchen stuff, sleeping bag. But it was nice. We ended up with a lot of things that we really didn't need. But
What was that?
no.
Oh, I thought we used everything. I think I used all my stuff. I know I used all my clothes.
It's better to have too much than not enough.
Yeah, no,
Right.
I don't know.
And then I am really, really glad that I actually put fenders on our bikes because of the time of year, and plus after the water that we had that summer, there was a lot of mud and water that we had to go through, and the fenders were lifesavers.
I was going to ask if you went with the fenders or simply returned with them.
No, I had questioned Buster multiple times about certain trips, and I came up with the conclusion that it's better to go with the fenders. It really did help.
It did, especially, I mean, I think if you're going out for a day ride, you don't really care if you get a little muddy or wet. You get home, you can change your clothes, but the clothes we were wearing were the clothes we were wearing for 9 days basically, especially every layer. So you didn't want your clothes to be wet because they weren't going to dry overnight.
Right.
So yeah, the fenders and it kept your gear clean and dry too in the back.
So
yeah, that was it. And then logistically, like I said, learning about the train was huge for us. As soon as we learned that, then that's like our trip was on, because that was the only thing that was kind of keeping us. Like I said, we decided to camp every other night. We didn't know if it was going to be cold, if it was going to be rainy, if we were going to be sore. Did we want to sleep on a little mat every night? We've done plenty of long distance biking, but we've never, before we did this trip, we hadn't done it for days on end, every day in a row. So going into, and we stayed at like Marriott's, or actually they're pretty reasonably priced. We could get one for $60 or $50, maybe $80 was the most we paid. So we tried to stay in those hotels because we knew we just take our bikes in with us. We knew what to expect. We were able to take a shower. I think once we were able to do some laundry. We would eat at some cafes or restaurants sometimes, at night. Found places, and then trying to decide what miles to do each day. We kind of we weren't really sure about that, but where we were going to stay and the campsites and the hotels kind of also determined how long. But we also wanted to leave time for us to take our time getting up in the morning, eating, stopping, because both of us are like, oh,
enjoy
look
the
at this.
sights.
Yeah, look at that. That's cool. Like one time there was a park that had a fort, and this really cool old fort for.
I even forget what the name of it was.
But anyway, so we drove down this park and explored this really cool fort, and we were able to do that. I don't think it was only like once or twice were we pressing at the end of the day to get to where we were going to camp or to get to where we were going to stay, and that was what we wanted to try to avoid.
So did you make reservations ahead of time for the every other night stay, or did you just decide to stop?
So the first couple nights, and then And then maybe I don't think I did. I think we just
No,
went. I think we did
definitely the first night in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, in Pittsburgh we did. We stayed at Pittsburgh the first night and left that morning. And then I think maybe the next, like I called the next night for that one, but then I realized these places aren't full.
Yeah, the time
And then
of
maybe
year.
in the morning I would call or something. So we had self-service most of the time. There's so much information out there that you can find. I mean, these websites that are on here are so thorough. I mean, they have everything on them. There's even mobile apps now for the Gap and the CNO.
Yep.
Tell you, and there's mile markers along the trail. So all this information and all these website informations have tell you what's at each mile marker, you know, or at mile marker such and such. So it's pretty easy to do.
That's really cool.
And also the mile markers make it nice because, you know, okay, 5 more miles.
That's awesome. I did read, you know, it's probably good you guys when you did. I think, didn't I see that Harper's Ferry Bridge is gone?
Yeah, that's now, but that's to get to the town of Harper's Ferry.
Okay. So it doesn't impact the trail ride?
No.
Or does it? Okay.
No.
Okay.
I think that actually impacts the Appalachian Trail.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Of the hikers.
Yeah.
How many
They
days
have
were
to
you riding
cross-
for?
What's that?
How many days were you riding for?
9.
Does that include? So when we drove
that
to
included our
DC
down day.
and we parked, probably the most expensive thing we did was pay for parking for our car in DC.
Yeah.
So we
I
parked
believe it.
We parked in Crystal City. We went on some website where you can find parking, like hotels. Since most people come by train or plane, they don't fill their parking lots. So
Mhm.
you can.
Yeah.
So we parked in Crystal City, and then got on our bikes, which was also a cool ride, and then rode through DC, and rode around until our train was like at 4 or 5
4 in the
o'clock.
afternoon, yeah.
And then putting our bikes on the train, that was also cool. I think they have like 8 spots on the train that you have to reserve. And it was $50 or $40 for the ticket and $20 for your bike.
Okay.
And the train ride was like 6 hours long.
6 hours, yeah. We
Yeah.
didn't get into
Yeah.
Pittsburgh until midnight.
Oof.
But it was nice. They had a dining car
Mhm.
on the train.
Double-decker
Dining car, which
Those
was
are
nice
nice.
to enjoy the scenery before it got too dark. Also got some food and other libations on the way out. So it was nice.
They had libations on the train.
And they did.
Had
Thank
singing,
God for.
they had singing on the train from other people partaking in too much libation. So yeah, it was fun because there was other people on the train who were doing kind of similar to us, but also the train stopped, so you didn't have to do the whole part. You could actually drive to any town, get on the train, and do just a section. And some people were doing that. We're getting on and just doing like a 50-mile section or just a day.
Oh, okay.
Drive out to Cumberland, get on the train, take it out to Pittsburgh, and just do the Gap.
Right.
Or go to DC and take it out to Cumberland and just ride back to DC.
Right.
It's
So the train left from Union Station?
yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, it stopped. I don't think it had like 5 or 6 stops.
Yeah.
So yeah, and another thing about the train. So in Pittsburgh, you hear trains all day, and you hear trains the whole time you're on the trail, and you hear that train that we were on the whole time you're on the trail.
I was going to ask, that shot where you guys were riding along the train tracks, like right close, did the train go by while you were there on the trail?
No.
So,
No. Okay.
No.
Yeah, that first campsite we had, that was in the shelter. So it was kind of cool. We knew there was a couple shelters, and we got to that one, and it was a cold night. Like it got down into the 30s some of those nights. One night there was snow at the spot we were at the night before. Like
Oh.
we missed that. But so we got into that shelter, and it faced the river. And it was kind of cool. It had a fireplace.
It was nice and tranquil when we went to sleep, but the train came by about midnight and
On the other side of the river.
river.
And you're in a valley. sounded like that train was going to go through the shelter. We about hit the roof. It was awesome. We woke up. We were just laughing. It
laughing.
was so ridiculously loud because it just echoed and captured in there. But when we were done, that was one of the things we missed. We were like, man, just hearing a train. Train
Every
whistles.
night you could hear trains.
But
That was a good part.
it was cool. It was yeah, it was awesome. On a bike, you know, and you get to someplace you want to explore, you can ride in, you can ride around, you can stop and talk to people. Someone's there, ask, you know, locals, get some information or just talk, you know, and then continue on your way. But that was one of the things that we really liked
Yeah.
about the bike riding. I mean,
So looking forward to doing another one somewhere.
there was a point even when we stayed at that lock house, the last night with the couple from Alaska, they had reserved, you can reserve some of the lock houses, and they had reserved that, and we met them, and they said, hey, do you want to stay in there? It was just basically like beds with like, what are those,
Yeah.
the ropes on it, and a little thin
A
straw
mattress and just threw your sleeping bag on top of the straw
There was
mattress.
no amenities, no electricity or anything, but you were inside.
Figured out why they came up with the saying "sleep tight" because you gotta tighten up those drawstrings on
guys-
the bed. And make sure it's comfortable. Now I get it.
Yeah, and then when we got there, it was kind of cool because they had this big fireplace in the back and with all this firewood that we could, and we're like, oh, that'd be really cool. And we're like, man, wish we had something at that point. We wish we had something to drink and some food. And we started looking on our phones, and
After
So-
we had gotten done a 40-mile ride that
yeah,
day.
we emptied our bikes and rode 5 miles into town and 5 miles back for
Beer and
snacks.
chips.
Best 5 miles you could ever spend, though.
Right.
Oh yeah.
But you can do that on a bike, you know? I mean, it's something more likely to. I mean, we like hiking, but it allows for times like that. It was
awesome.
cool. It was really, like I said, I recommend it to anyone because there's so much access, there's so much information. It's easy to do. You can do part of it. We saw people who were switching out. Like they had people driving and people riding, and then they'd meet them at like a trailhead, and then they'd switch. Like those people would load up their bikes, and other people would get.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. It was a group of like 6 people,
Yeah.
and they each took turns driving the shag wagon,
Right.
and the other people would ride the trail. That was
And most
neat.
of those people, they were going to like B&Bs or hotels. And we also saw people were like, someone who wanted to come along for the trip, but they actually didn't bike. So they drove like all their luggage. So those people were riding without gear too, because it was all in the car.
A chase car.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. So
That was
there's
neat.
a lot of options.
It's
So if
nice
you did
having
it-
a support vehicle.
So if you did it again, when would you do it in the fall again like you did, or would you pick another season?
I don't know. The fall was nice. Maybe not as late as we did it because we really did hit a bunch of cold nights. I would say more on a end of September, last week of September, first week of October. Get more of the fall foliage, I guess.
Well, it wasn't actually, the foliage wasn't turned yet.
I did a trip out of Washington to the Paw Paw Tunnel and back in early June.
Yeah.
And I got caught by the first hurricane of the season, my third day out. And
Nice.
it made the rest of the trip back to Washington, D.C. very miserable.
Oh,
I saw 2 people on the trail for the last 40